Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our program on Nectar of Devotion. This is a summary study book written by ISKCON's founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ji. And today we will be starting our discussion on Chapter 18. The title of this chapter is Character of Ecstatic Love. Overall, this is our 20th class. And I would like to invite Rakesh Garg Prabhu from Meerut to kindly lead us into the chanting of Mangala Sharan prayers. Prabhuji.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupaha Kadamayyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurunu Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतम सावधूतम परिजन सहितम कृष्ण चैतन्य देवम श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। थैंक यू प्रभु।
Very nicely chanted, Rakesh Prabhuji. Thank you very much. And now moving to the next item, which is the summary recap of the previous class, our class number 19th. And for this, I would like to invite His Grace Jivan Radha Govind Prabhu, disciple of His Holiness Jayapataga Swami Maharaj. Prabhuji, please can you lead us to the recap of this summary?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank our Siksha Guru, Keshav Prabhuji, for giving me this opportunity to make the presentation for the recap of the last class. Recap of class number 19, chapter number 17 of Nectar of Devotion, titled Ecstatic Summary Study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Actually, in the previous classes, Uttama Bhakti, that is 3 types, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti were covered. 2 types of Sadhana Bhakti, namely the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sakti, have already been covered in the previous classes. And Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti was covered extensively in detail in number of previous classes, and Raganuga Bhakti in previous 2 classes. The subject matter of Bhava Bhakti was covered in the last class, and the main points on the recap of the class are as follows. The first point is Sadhana Bhakti was covered in chapter number 2, and its purpose is to awaken Bhava or ecstasy. Bhava also is called Rati. That reference is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, verse number 1313. Definition of Bhava Bhakti. Actually, the verses runs like this. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Shuyamsu Samyad Bhakta Ruchibihi Chitta Mashrunya Krita Aso Bhava Uchyate. There are 4 lines, 4 parts are there. The first part is Shuddha Sattva part. The distinguishing nature of Bhava is unadulterated goodness or Shuddha Sattva. That is Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. Prema Shuyamsu Samyadrek is the second thing. That is, Bhava is a ray of sun of Prema, which will soon rise in the heart. Bhava softens the heart by various tastes. That is, Ruchibihi Chitta Mashrunya. And then such bhakti is called Bhava Bhakti. Actually, there are there are 5-6 verses which covers the definition of Bhava Bhakti, also the characteristics of Bhakti, and how the Bhava Bhakti, how the Shuddha Sattva develops the Bhava Bhakti. All these things are covered in verses 1 to 6. Then let us take up the first primary characteristics, the Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. The explanation on that. At this stage of Bhava Bhakti, Shuddha Sattva enters devotee's heart. The heart becomes purely spiritual. Absolutely, there is no question of any sort of a dirt feeling or any type of a lackey or anything like that. In the heart, the heart becomes completely purely spiritual. This Shuddha Sattva is a Lord's internal potency which revives the living entity's dormant love of Godhead. Dormant seed cannot grow without heat and the light of the sun. Here the dormant seed is the prema, and heat and light are the Shuddha Sattva. In every living entity's heart, love for Godhead is dormant in a sleeping state. That is, prema is there in every living entity, in entity's heart without being activated. The Lord's internal potency awakens this and enlivens this. Then next point is how Shuddha Sattva enlivens the Bhava Bhakti. Shuddha Sattva is composed of two potencies of the Lord, internal potencies. One is known as the Samvita Shakti or the knowledge-giving Shakti, which is where the devotees know more and more about the Lord. And second is the devotional potency or affectional potency, which is known as the Ahladini Shakti, which empowers one to manifest blissful love of Godhead. For any living activity, to do doing any activity, we need to know the knowledge of the same, and also definitely the sort of affection or affinity for the same. These are all the requirements. When both the potencies combine in these potencies, that is both the Ahladini as well as Samvita Shakti, that is when they combine in the heart, one begins to release Krishna as the supreme object of love. Now let us come to secondary characteristics, which is Ruchibihi Chitta Mashrunya. Bhava, in this stage, what happens is the Bhava softens the heart and gives rise to various states. With the Krishna consciousness stimulation already achieved through Shuddha Sattva, the soft heart is easily moved by emotions that and Bhava develops. This results in three kinds of tastes blossoming. One, to the desire to achieve Krishna. Second, to please Krishna with the various services. Third, to be active with Krishna in the mind and heart. Next, explanation of the Prema Shuyamshu, that is the third part. Here there is an analogy. Bhava is a ray of the sun of the Prema, that is the love of Godhead. Here the Bhava is compared to the ray of the sun, and the love of Godhead, Prema, is compared to the sun God. Sun and sun rays are same in quality, but different in intensity. Bhava is onset of Prema Bhakti and starting point, just like dawn is the onset of the day. When one activates the Bhava, the full height of Prema, the love of Godhead will manifest quickly. Then next, let us come to the symptoms of Bhava and the example on the Bhava. Bhava is the preliminary state that is called the Prathama Avastha or the sprout of the Prema. The symptoms of the Bhava Bhakti are the tears, ashru, and hair standing on end, that is known as Pulaka in Sanskrit. Next, the other points are as follows. Though Bhava is self-revealing Swayam Prakasha, it appears to manifest in the mind and becomes the state of mind. Mind itself in the form of emotions. Through its essential nature, Bhava is nothing but the taste itself. It also acts as the cause of tasting the sweetness of Lord's forms, pastime, and also his associates. Bhava in itself, in a nutshell, is the cause and effect. Next, as far as the example of a Bhava Bhakta is concerned, meditating on Lord's lotus feet, Ambarisha Maharaja developed slight transformations in the heart, and he started, started shedding shivering tears in his eyes. Next comes the topic of causes of bhava. Actually, there are after shloka number 6, verse number 7 to 23 gives the details of the causes of bhava. There are two ways of to achieve bhava. One is the normal method, another is a rare method. Normal method is the normal method is devotee's ardent devotional practice. The rare method is special mercy of the Lord or his devotee. The normal method is called sadhana abhiniveshana, and the Lord's special mercy or the devotee is known as Krishna Tattva Bhaktya Prasada. Then again, the sadhana abhiniveshana, that is the normal bhakti, that is the thing is divided into two parts. One is Vaidhi sadhana and the raga anuga sadhana. Now let us get into the examples. Example, that is now bhava arising from Vaidhi sadhana. In the association of Bhaktivedantas, who mercifully gave him permission to hear Krishna Katha, Narada Muni, in his past life, heard of Krishna's topics and became attracted, ruchi, by listening to them attentively. His bhava and for his Lord Krishna appeared, and later prema also appeared in the heart, in his heart, and the covering of passion and ignorance got vanquished. Next example is the Vaidhi sadhana, this thing from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25.25. Here, the Kapila Muni in his, actually in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Muni is speaking to his mother Devahuti on the Sankhya philosophy. In this particular conversation, here the points which are brought out are in the association of devotees, Krishna Katha is pleasing to the ear and heart, and one gradually develops faith, Shraddha, that is, and Shraddha, Rati, Bhava, and Prema. This is the example from Srimad Bhagavatam, and Kapila Muni, he is giving the Upadesha to his mother. Then Bhava arising from Raga Nuga Sadhana. A young girl named Chandravahini dancing in front of a deity of Krishna, and she was dancing throughout the night. Her dancing is an example of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, because she desired to develop the sentiment of Ragatmikas, that is gopis of Raja. Then Krishna Tata Bhakta Prasadaya, that is whatever that Krishna's mercy through. There are Krishna's mercy. One is we have already discussed about the normal method. Second is the rare method, where Krishna's mercy or the devotee's mercy come into play. Krishna's mercy can come through vacha, or it can come through his blessings, his appearance and his blessings, and is also through his unspoken blessing, and it also comes through his appearance. The examples are Lord Krishna. This is from Naradiya Purana. Lord Krishna speaks to Narada, may you have undaunting bhava for me. Next is the Krishna, that is through his appearance. When the inhabitants of Jangala province saw Krishna, their hearts melted and they could not take their eyes away from him. This is for the example for the appearance. Then next is through heartfelt, unspoken, that is Harda, or the blessings. This is from Shukla Samhita. Narada tells Vyasadeva, you have given birth to a great devotee son. Bhakti to Vishnu has appeared in his heart without sadhana. Next, let us come to the examples of mercy by Krishna's devotees. There are two examples. One is the example of Bhakta Prahalada, and the other is the example of Mrigari. Narada Muni tells Yudhishthira, this is from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Narada is telling Yudhishthira, Prahlada had unflinching faith in Krishna and natural attraction for him. Narada granted that favor to Prahlada. Thus, his rati is called Naisargik, that is the thing through mercy. Example number 2, that is Mrugari. Parvata Muni told Narada, you are so gracious that your mercy and good wishes, through your good mercy and good wishes, Anta Nugari attained Rati for Lord Achyuta. Next, this completes the up to verse number 1.3.23. The last verse 1.3.24. According to this different type of devotee, there are 5 types of bhava: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. These things are covered in the latter chapters of our Nectar of Devotion, Bhaktivedanta Sindhu. I thank once again Prabhuji for giving me this opportunity to make this recap, and I also thank all our devotee friends for giving a patient here. In case if I have made some mistake, I request Guruji to correct me and then correct me. Thank you very much once again, Guruji, for giving me this opportunity. Thanking all the devotees also. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Jivan Radha Govind Prabhu. Very nicely covered all the points in the summary. I think the name of that girl was Chandrakanti. I think you mentioned something differently. Chandra was, you did mention something with Chandra, but probably you mentioned a little different name, but the name was Chandrakanti.
Chandravahini, correct.
Yeah, so Chandrakanti is the name. That's okay. Yeah. So that is the minor correction. And otherwise, summary was very well captured. Thanks again to Jivan Radha Govind Prabhu. Really appreciate. So now we will continue with our discussion, our fresh discussion on the class today, which is chapter number 18. And I will now take you to the slide on the NOD chapters and the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu verses table. We have so far covered till chapter number 17, where we had this discussion on Bhava Bhakti, ecstatic love. So extending that discussion further, chapter 18 talks now about various characteristics of Bhava Bhakti. And the title in Nectar of Devotion Srila Prabhupada has given is Character of Ecstatic Love. So in the previous class, we had a discussion around 24 verses of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. In today's class, we will cover even more verses. Roughly, these are 36, 37 verses from 25 to 61. So the class will be a little fast paced today. Subject matter is not that complicated of this class. So I hope you will be able to relate to it relatively easily compared to the previous one. So let us begin our journey. From this particular chart, you would know that where we are right now. So we have covered Uttama Bhakti, Sadhan Bhakti, and all this we have covered. Now remaining is Bhava Bhakti, and the last chapter on Bhava Bhakti today, chapter 18, we will discuss, and Prema Bhakti will be chapter 19, which will be the next class, which we will cover Prema Bhakti. Okay. Now, coming to the topic of today's class, chapter 18, as you would have realized from the previous class discussion, that Bhava stage is a very elevated stage. It's not a ordinary stage. It's a very, very elevated stage. Very few devotees actually reach to that stage, generally speaking. Now the question is, how do we identify some devotee who is at the moment in the Bhava stage? And Srila Rup Goswami gives some discussion around it. Prabhupada also in Nectar of Devotion makes some commentary around this topic. So in Bhava stage, normally there will be external symptoms that will be exhibited by the devotee. And in the previous class also, we just briefly mentioned that ecstatic symptoms do start to manifest in the body of the Bhava Bhakta. And we gave two examples. One was Ashru, and another one was Pulak. Ashru means tears. Pulak means hair standing on the end on the body. So there are external symptoms. Sometimes they are seen, like tears, shivering, faltering of voice, etc. But here Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that they are not sufficient evidence to ascertain that a devotee has achieved Bhava Bhakti. And the reason why, because such symptoms can be imitated. Such symptoms can be imitated by some actor. So if somebody is a good actor, he may cry like somebody who is in a Bhava Bhakti, or he may also exhibit some like faltering of voice. Those kind of external symptoms some actor may also imitate. So people may not be very clear or very confident about whether this is in Bhava state or not. Similarly, another possibility is that if somebody is genuinely at the platform of Bhava Bhakti, that the devotee may actually want to conceal those emotional symptoms. So in the stage of Bhava Bhakti, the devotee is not in the uh, does not want to advertise his symptoms. He would typically and generally he would like to conceal his symptoms, external symptoms like tears and all that. So a genuine Bhava Bhakta may conceal these emotional symptoms. Now we may come across a Bhava Bhakta and we don't see these symptoms, and we may make a wrong choice. We may say that this particular devotee, when he's not showing any emotional symptoms, may not be a Bhava Bhakta. So Srila Rupa Goswami actually has not uh, given uh, external symptoms as characteristics of bhav. So the list that Srila Rupa Goswami is presenting in this chapter uh, through Prabhupada gives character traits which cannot be imitated or concealed. So like a very, I would say, an intelligent thinker, he is giving those kind of traits, those kind of characteristics of Bhava Bhakti, which cannot be imitated. So they have to be very genuine and they have to be coming from the inside. So Srila Rupa Goswami does not give external symptoms as the characteristics of bhav. Rather, he gives some very genuine internal symptoms of bhav bhakti, so that it can be easily identified. And two verses in this chapter, 25 and 26, gives the characteristics of bhav. Now I will read down this list for you. So the very first is known as Shanti. So Shanti means tolerance or perseverance. I will explain these in a little while. I will just read down right now. Avyarth kalatvam. Avyarth means without any reason. Kalatvam means time. So avyarth kalatvam means not wasting any time in the devotional service of the Lord. Then virakti. Virakti means detachment from material enjoyment. Fourth one is man shunyata. Man shunyata means pridelessness. In other words, it means the devotee does not hanker for any material respect. Then asha bandha. Asha bandha means he is very hopeful and confident about Lord Krishna's mercy. Then samutkantha. So utkantha means lot of longing, eagerness. Samutkantha means longing for Lord's service. Seventh one is nam gane sada ruchi, taste for chanting Krishna's name. Then asaktis tad gunakhyane. Asakti tad gunakhyane means attachment to discuss Krishna's qualities. And the last one is Pritis tad vasati sthale. Love for Krishna's abode Vrindavan. Vasati means where Lord Krishna had lived. Sthale means place. Priti means love. So love Priti tad vasati sthale. So after giving this list of 9 internal items, internal characteristics of bhava, Srila Rupa Goswami uh, then defines and explains with examples. So he does two things. He gives the definition of each of these things. what is Shanti, what is Avyarth Kalatvam, what is Virakti. Although in the translation it is very clear, but he gives some brief explanation in Sanskrit, and then continues to give one reference or one example from the scriptures of Shanti, Avyarth Kalatvam, Virakti, etc. and so on. So let us see what brief definition Srila Rupa Goswami gives and what reference from the scripture he gives to explain that particular topic. So let us see what he tells about Shanti, the translation of which is tolerance. So the definition that Rupa Goswami gives is being undisturbed even when there is cause for disturbance. Being undisturbed even when there is cause for disturbance. Now, many times in our life, we see that sometimes life is going on in normal, there are not many troubles, but sometimes in life we face troubles. Maybe some disease has come, maybe some near and dear one has passed away, maybe there is a somebody has filed a court case against us. So uh, that way there could be two different possibilities. One is that our life goes in normal way, another one is that our life is not going on normal. Now, Shanti means tolerance. That means being undisturbed even when there is a cause of disturbance. And one of the examples that Srila Rupa Goswami gives is example of King Parikshit. So King Parikshit was cursed to die, and the curse to King Parikshit was given by a Brahmana boy named Shringi, and he was cursed to die within 7 days. However, King Parikshit did not become disturbed after receiving that curse. King Parikshit said, "Let the sages, Ganges, and the Lord accept me as a surrendered servant. I do not mind the Brahmana's curse. Let the snake bird come and bite me at once. I only desire to hear about Lord Vishnu." So when our life is in a situation where there are a lot of disturbances, then it becomes very difficult to uh, to continue to practice our sadhana, to continue to practice our devotional life. It becomes very disturbed. So the mind is always thinking about the cause of the disturbance, how to remove that disturbance, and normal routine becomes very disturbed. But here we see the example of King Parikshit, who was cursed to die within 7 days, but he was not at all fearful of his death. Rather, he was actually hankering, he was desiring to hear more and more about Lord Vishnu. And this verse is coming from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 19th chapter, 15th verse. So this is how Srila Rupa Goswami explains what does Shanti mean. So he's saying that King Parikshit was actually at the stage of Bhav Bhakti, where he did not became disturbed even when he was cursed to die within 7 days. Then the second one is Avyarth Kalatvam, not wasting time at all. Hmm. So here the reference is given from Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya. Devotees praise Krishna with their words, remember him with their minds, and offer respects with their bodies continuously, but are still not satisfied. With tears flowing from their eyes, the devotees of the Lord offer their complete lives to him. So this one verse is coming from Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya, where it is being told that you can see here the symptoms of bhava is shown in this verse. With tears flowing from their eyes, the devotees of the Lord offer their complete lives to him. So they are not at all interested in wasting any moment, even a single moment, uh, in Lord service. Also, we saw in the previous class the example of Chandrakanti, who was performing Raganuga Bhakti uh, in front of the deities of the Lord. So in Chandrakanti's example also we saw that sometimes when we are performing Vedhi Bhakti, Bhakti out of obligation, out of following scriptures, we may dance in Kirtan, but we may dance in Kirtan maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe for 30 minutes, half an hour, but not more than that. But in the case of Chandrakanti, we saw that she was performing Raganuga Bhakti, and out of her ecstatic love, out of that bhava, she actually continued to dance throughout the night. So when there is bhavana, when there is bhava awakening within the heart, then the devotee does not feel any tiredness, and would not like to waste even a single moment to perform that devotional service for the Lord. So that is one example. Another example that we can see, although not given in the Nectar of Devotion or by Srila Rup Goswami, we also see the example of six Goswamis of Vrindavan: Rup Goswami, Jeev Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and so on. Now you have some understanding and some knowledge about of their lives, how these Goswamis, six Goswamis of Vrindavan, continuously wrote bhakti literature. They were always continuously engaged in glorifying Lord Krishna, engaged in some service or the other, and so on. Also, example of Srila Prabhupada. So we have shared at different occasions about the life of Srila Prabhupada, and how Srila Prabhupada was not wasting even a single moment in the service of the Lord. Either he would be busy in giving classes, writing books, or maybe traveling, or maybe instructing his followers of how to perform this devotional service. So we see that example. So avyarth kalatvam is another internal characteristics of bhav. Now the point to be noted is that this is internal symptom. Nobody can fake this kind of a characteristic. So you will see very visibly, you can see how these kind of devotees who are at the bhava stage are not interested in wasting even a single moment. Then virakti. Virakti is translated as detachment, and Srila Rupa Goswami defined virakti as having natural distaste for sense objects. And the example is again given from Srimad Bhagavatam. Here the example is King Bharat. So Bharat Maharaj gave up his wife, children, friends, and empire, just as one gives up stool after evacuating. It was easy for him because he was fond of serving the Lord. So when King Bharat Maharaj was of a very senior age, very advanced, then he wanted to uh, extend his services, extend his time to do some devotional service. And he, when he decided to do that, he gave up his wife, children, friends, and empire. And a very graphic example is given here: just as one gives up stool after evacuating. Now, how many of us would like to think about the stool that we pass on while attending to the calls of nature? We would have no attachment to that particular matter, isn't it? So that kind of an example is given. That example does not mean that a person looks towards his children, wife as stool. No, that is not the idea. So there is a difference between affection and attachment. So when we talk about attachment, one should think of the example of Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra. So even though Duryodhan was doing all kind of abominable activities, but Dhritarashtra was always accepting his abominable activities and was not at all correcting his son. So that is the example of blind attachment. However, affection is something else. In affection, sometimes uh, we may correct the other person. Sometimes we may even shout at the other person. But shouting or correcting or maybe scolding does not mean that we are not affectionate towards other person. So here, King Bharat giving up his wife, children, friends, and empire does not mean that he was blindly attached to these people. Rather, he was, although he was affectionate, but he was also interested in the other higher purposes of the life. Also, we should understand here, detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself apart from allurements. Like, for example, I say that, okay, uh, I am so detached that I don't even drink tea. Now, in my mind or in my heart, I may have some attachment to drinking tea. So that does not, and artificially I may have given up tea. So that is what it is being mentioned here. Detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself apart from allurements. In initial stages, a devotee must try to stay away from alluring attachments, But a mature devotee is not attracted even in the presence of material allurements. So in the beginning stages, it may be possible that we may practice some restraint from these allurements. Don't know, I'm not going to drink tea, or I'm not going to eat onion and garlic, or I'm not going to eat any non-vegetarian food, although there might be some small attachment or attraction towards these things. But in the advanced stages, then the devotee naturally gives up these things. Even if you bring those things in front of the devotee is not attracted to these things. So that is what we should understand. What does detachment means? Naturally having distaste for some activities which are material in nature, which are going to take us away from the Lord. Fourth one is man shunyata, pridelessness. What it means is to remain humble in spite of being in a high position. Example that Srila Rupa Goswami gives here is Emperor Bhagirath. Though the crest jewel among kings, became a mendicant and begged from his enemies and offered respects to the dog eaters. And this reference is coming from Padma Purana. Now, here King Bhagirath has been mentioned, who was a very elevated king, very renowned king. He was, I hope you know that King Bhagirath was is famous for bringing Mother Ganges onto the planet Earth. So he's a very renowned king, very elevated personality. However, King Bhagirath was at the stage of bhava, in the uh, ecstatic love for the Lord. And in that stage of mind, in that state of mind, he was begging like a mendicant. And from whom he was begging? He was begging from his enemies. And he even offered respect to very low class people like dog eaters, chandal. In Sanskrit we call them chandal. Now begging involves being ready to be insulted. So when somebody is going for begging, then he is at the mercy of the other person. The other person can reject. No, I'm not interested in giving you anything. So it comes with some insult. But a devotee tolerates such insult for the sake of the Lord. A devotee can accept any position in the service of the Lord. So, in the state of bhava, he's not thinking about himself or herself. He's only thinking about the Lord. So, when he's only thinking about the Lord, he's not worried whether he's getting insulted or not. Now, this is not a recommendation that we start begging, but to tell that in bhava stage, a person forgets about one's prestige. So, that is the main point. Fifth one is asha bandha, which means hope. So the devotee in bhava stage has firm conviction and confidence that one will attain Krishna's favor. And in this regard, one example is given, and this example given is of Sanatan Goswami, elder brother of Rup Goswami. So here Sanatan Goswami is mentioning something. What is Sanatan Goswami saying? I have no love for Krishna, nor causes of developing that love, namely hearing and chanting in bhakti. I do not meditate on Vishnu in yoga. I cannot execute practices of Gyan or Varnashram. I do not even have good birth to execute these actions. But since you are most merciful to the least qualified, though I have impure desires, O dear lover of gopis, my aspiration for you continues to agitate me. So this is what hope. Hope here, what is the main message through this example? Through the example is that the devotee, although he considers himself as very unqualified, highly unqualified, but still, because of his despite of his highly unqualified situation, he is still extremely hopeful on the Lord's mercy, that the Lord will do favor to me. He is very convict. He had a very firm conviction and confidence about it. Here in this example, we see how Sanatan Goswami is showing himself in a very humble situation, that he is not qualified, he is not uh, capable of doing bhakti, capable of doing hearing and chanting. But we know that Sanatan Goswami actually is a very elevated soul. So here, the lack of qualification expressed in this verse is only an expression of humility of Sanatan Goswami. However, the devotee at the bhava stage actually consider himself very, very humble, and in that state of humility is still very, very much hopeful of the Lord's mercy. So this is also an internal characteristic which is not possible to imitate by somebody who is not at the stage of bhava. Samutkantha, which means longing. The definition by Rupa Goswami is having intense greed and eagerness for attaining service to the Lord. Example given is of Bilva Mangal Thakur. So we have discussed the story of Bilva Mangal Thakur in the previous classes. Briefly explaining that story is Bilva Mangal Thakur was born in a very reputed Brahmana family, and he was very much attracted towards a prostitute. Hmm. And that prostitute actually became Bilva Mangal Thakur's guru, in that sense that she suggested Bilva Mangal Thakur, why not you develop this kind of attraction which you have for me, for Lord Krishna. If you have that kind of attraction for Lord Krishna, it will be very, very beneficial for your life. So Bilva Mangal Thakur actually took that uh, seriously to his heart, and actually went to become a very, very elevated Vaishnava. So that Bilva Mangal Thakur has written this book called Krishna Karnamrita. In Krishna Karnamrita, he says, Krishna with his bent black eyebrows, thick eyelashes, attractive and shifty eyes, soft words, which melt the heart, sweet and red lips, and intoxicating fluid sound, enchants the universe. I long to see that Krishna in Vrindavan. So you can see here how Bilvamangal Thakur in his book Krishna Karnamrit is describing very nice qualities of the Lord. And after describing these qualities of the Lord, he's saying that I long to see that Krishna in Vrindavan. So having intense greed and eagerness for attaining service to the Lord. So that is also a very strong internal characteristic that a devotee shows in bhava stage. And here one line is very nice. This eagerness is the price to attain success in Krishna consciousness. So one time, our devotee asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, uh, I don't have that emotion to practice devotional service. So what do I do? So Prabhupada said that have that desire to have that emotion to practice Krishna consciousness. So, uh, so again, coming back to this line, this eagerness is the price to attain success in Krishna consciousness. Now, we might say that we don't have that kind of a longing that Bilva Mangal Thakur had. So, like Prabhupada suggested that devotee, that if you don't have that eagerness to advance in Krishna consciousness, so have that eagerness to have that eagerness. Have that eagerness that I may have that eagerness to have uh, to advance in Krishna consciousness. So here that this eagerness, this longing actually is the price to attain success in Krishna bhakti. Seventh one is Nam Gane Sada Ruchihi. Taste for chanting holy names. Here again the example is given from Krishna Karnamrit, that book by Bilva Mangal Thakur. And in this book, Bilva Mangal Thakur describes about the various devotees of Lord Krishna who were very eagerly serving Lord Krishna, who had that mood, who had that bhava for Lord Krishna. And in that Krishna Karnamrit, there is one associate of Srimati Radharani. She says, O Lord Govinda, the daughter of King Vrishbhanu is now shedding tears like honey drops from a lotus, and she anxiously chants your holy name, Krishna, 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 in a supremely sweet voice. In a supremely sweet voice. So, here the associate of Radharani is describing how the names of Lord has to be chanted in a supremely sweet voice, like honey drops from a lotus, and she's shedding tears while chanting your name. So this is Nam Gane Sadaruchi, taste for chanting holy name of the Lord. So that is the mood or that is the bhava of that devotee in who is in ecstatic love for the Lord. Eighth one is tad gunakhyane asaktihi, which means attachment to discuss Krishna's qualities. Again, example is given from Krishna Karnamrita. The example is that youthful Krishna with the qualities of Cupid. Cupid actually is another name of Kamadev. So in English, we call Kamadev as Cupid. So that youthful Krishna with the qualities of Cupid, who is extremely sweet and extremely naughty, has stolen my heart. What should I do? Now, here you can see how much, how nicely and how sweetly this devotee in Bhava Bhakti is explaining, is describing his attachment to discuss Krishna's qualities. That youthful Krishna with the qualities of Cupid, that means he's very beautiful, who is extremely sweet and extremely naughty, has stolen my heart. What should I do? So, as I was mentioning, this Krishna Karnamrit book is by a very exalted Vaishnava devotee, Bilva Mangal Thakur, in which in this book he has described various emotions of various exalted devotees of Krishna. So a very nice poetry written in Sanskrit. I had actually also posted one a drama on Bilva Mangal Thakur on WhatsApp chat. So I'm not sure how many of you got that opportunity to see that drama, but it's a very nice drama on the life of Bilva Mangal Thakur. If you want to see that, you may once again look at that link in the previous posts. Now coming to the last one, Tad Vasati Sthale Pritihi, love for Krishna's abode. Now, love for Krishna's abode means, as part of Vedi Bhakti, we have discussed this point, Mathura Vas, or living in the Dham, spending some time, maybe a week, a day, a month, and so on, going to a holy place like Vrindavan, Mathura, living there. But in Vaidhi Bhakti, the bhakta or the devotee actually lives in these holy dham out of an obligation, out of, because our guru has mentioned, our scriptures are telling it, we should go and live in dham maybe for some time. But in the bhava stage, when the devotee is living in the dham, the attraction for living in the dham and attraction for love for Lord's dham is very evident. You can see from this verse, and this verse is being mentioned from Padyavali. The verse says, Nanda's house was here. This is where Krishna broke the cart. Here is where Damodar, who cuts material bondage, was bound up by Mother Yashoda. When will I be fortunate enough to wander in Vrajabhumi with tears, drinking streams of nectar flowing from the mouth of an elder Mathuravasi? Now you see here, there's a difference in Bhava Bhakti compared to Vaidhi Bhakti. Here you can see, when will I be fortunate enough to wander in Vrajabhumi with tears, drinking streams of nectar flowing from the mouth of an elder Mathuravasi? So here there is an intense love, intense desire, ecstatic love for the Lord to hear more and more about the various pastimes of the Lord, to visit those places where those pastimes of the Lord actually took place. So again, that point is very important to understand. The characteristics of bhava that has been described by Srila Rupa Goswami are internal characteristics, and these cannot be faked. They can be easily identified by some devotee who wants to understand whether this devotee is at the stage of bhava or actually is not at the stage of bhava. Rather, he is imitating those symptoms. Now, after discussing the characteristics of bhava, Srila Rupa Goswami also elaborates on another very important topic, which is symptoms of bhava in neophytes or non-devotees, which is unreal rati or bhava. So sometimes it may happen that some devotees who are not pure devotees, but by their practice of some devotional service, they may develop some symptoms like what we have discussed in short while ago, is specifically the external symptoms: tears, hair standing on the end, etc., etc. Those kind of external symptoms. But how are we supposed to understand those symptoms? Are they really bhava or they are something else? So in order to clarify on that topic, Srila Rupa Goswami has given few verses to explain that point. If softness of the heart, which is a symptom of rati, and I mentioned to you in the previous class, when we talk about the word rati, it is same as bhava. So unreal rati or bhava. If softness of the heart, the symptom of rati, becomes clearly visible in persons desiring liberation or in other unqualified person, it is not real rati. It is not real rati. Now here in verse number 41, Srila Rupa Goswami is describing that how sometimes some of these symptoms actually can become visible in some people, but they are not pure devotees. And in order to explain that point, Srila Rupa Goswami is saying clearly visible in person desiring liberation. And we know by the definition of Uttama Bhakti that Uttama Bhakti is free from jnana and karma. Jnana karmadi anavritam. So a person who is desiring liberation cannot be at the stage of pure devotional service. And if that person is not at pure devotional service, his objective is not pure devotional service, rati cannot come in his heart. That symptoms of bhava cannot come in his heart. That is why Srila Rupa Goswami is saying it is not real rati. Some more clarification is coming in this bullet point. One who has a real rati desires only to please the Lord. There is no other desire. If other desires are present, it should not be considered rati in spite of presence of some symptoms. So some symptoms. So he's talking about some external symptoms in general. Srila Rupa Goswami also clarifies this point that rati is very rare. This kind of symptoms are not every day or in every devotee we see. It is very rare. And in order to explain this point, he's mentioning in these two verses, 42nd and 43rd, he's saying, how can rati appear in persons having desires for enjoyment or liberation? So enjoyment means fruitive activity, that we do some activity, we get a fruit, we want to enjoy that fruit. Or mukti, liberation. How can rati appear in persons having desire for enjoyment or liberation? Those persons do not perform pure bhakti. Rati appears in those who have no material desires. Rati is not given immediately by Krishna, even to the devotees, since it is very confidential, even to the devotees. So devotees who are practicing Vaidhi Bhakti uh, with the goal to attain pure devotional service are also known as pure devotees. They are also called as Uttama Bhaktas because their intention is pure. Although they may not be at the stage of bhava or prema or even ragatmika or raganuga, but rati is not given immediately by Krishna even to the devotees. And here the devotees we are talking about is the devotees specifically in the Vedhi sadhana stage, since it is very confidential. And we have discussed in our earlier classes about the characteristics of pure bhakti. So it is sudurlabha, the sixth characteristic, sudurlabha. Sudurlabha means Krishna doesn't give this immediately or and very easily. So similarly, rati or bhav is very rare. Again, many so-called devotees artificially think of Krishna's Ashtakaliya Leela and pretend that Krishna and Radharani are talking to them, and so on. But an experienced devotee can evaluate such a pretender's imitative attachment to Krishna. Sometimes when you may associate with some devotees in future, or maybe you may already have that kind of experience, it may happen that some devotee might say and come to you, I talk to Lord Krishna, I talk to I talk to Radharani. Like that, there are many sometimes people who may claim that. But we should understand that many so-called devotees artificially think of Lord Krishna's pastime and pretend that Krishna and Radharani are talking to them. But an experienced devotee can evaluate such a pretender's imitative attachment to Krishna. So we need to understand that this kind of emotion is not usual. This kind of emotion is very rare. So I'm not saying that devotee actually might be an imitator, or I cannot say that, but it is most likely would be the case that he is a pretender. He's pretending it because it is rare. And sometimes, many times, devotees who are at the bhava stage don't make a public show, don't advertise what their internal mood is, what their internal emotions are. So if somebody is making this claim in public, or in even in private also, uh, the chances are that this devotee is a pretender. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami gives explanation of some symptoms of rati which are actually not uh, uh, fully qualify as real rati, but in sometimes in some devotees these kind of symptoms may arise, like maybe tears or maybe faltering of voice, etc. However, these devotees are not pure devotees. These devotees are mixed devotees, not Shuddha Bhaktas, but mixed Bhaktas. Mixed Bhakta means what? They have desire for fruitive activities, they have desire for enjoyment, they have desire for liberation. So they are doing bhakti simply as a tool. Simply, they are using bhakti practices simply as a tool to achieve what? To achieve enjoyment or to achieve liberation. And they may do this bhakti very intensely, very dedicatedly. However, their goal is not pure bhakti. Their goal is not pure service, devotional service to the Lord's lotus feet. Their goal is something else. And as I mentioned, two examples, the goal may be enjoyment, or goal may be liberation, mukti. So Srila Rupa Goswami says that although these are mixed bhaktas, but just because uh, they are connected with the Lord, they are connected with devotional service, sometimes they may show some symptoms like that. And in 44th and 45th verse, he explains what is rati abhas, ratyabhas. So abhas means looks like, it appears like, abhas, feels like, and rati is, as we have discussed, it is bhava. So bhav abhas or ratya abhas is something like which is known as semblance of rati. So in these verses, 44th and 45th verse, Srila Rupa Goswami is giving you a definition of what is ratyabhas. He's saying ratyabhas is a semblance of rati exhibited by mixed devotees, and these are mixed devotees, they are not Shuddha Bhaktas. It astounds ignorant people, but those in knowledge understand the reality. It astounds ignorant people. So sometimes a devotee may dance in a kirtan and his face may look very blissful. Sometimes even tears might be flowing from his eyes. However, in his internal heart, he is not thinking bhakti or pure devotional service as the main goal of his life. Inside his heart, he's thinking liberation, or he's thinking enjoyment. He want to achieve some material desire, and that is why he's doing some bhakti. But while doing this bhakti, he may actually show some symptoms like rati, semblance of rati. That is what Rup Goswami is saying, semblance of rati. And here, while explaining ratyabhas, Rup Goswami gives two examples. He's saying it is of two types. One is pratibimba and another one is called chaya. So pratibimba means reflection. Like we say pratibimba when we are seeing our face in the mirror. So it is a reflection from the mirror. And in Sanskrit or in Hindi, we call it pratibimb. Pratibimb and chaya. Now these are two types of ratyabhas. Now let us understand what is exactly pratibimb ratyabhas and what is exactly chaya ratyabhas. Pratibimb ratyabhas, which is a reflection of rati. What it means is pratibimb ratyabhas is characterized by few apparent qualities of rati, like tears, accompanied by desire for enjoyment and liberation. Even such a reflection of rati awards enjoyment and liberation without much effort by the sadhaka. Now here Rup Goswami is saying, what is Ratyabhas? As I mentioned to you, Ratyabhas appears in mixed devotees. Mixed devotees means that these devotees do not have pure devotional service or Uttama Bhakti or Shuddha Bhakti as their internal goal. When I say internal goal means in their consciousness, in their chetana, they don't consider pure devotional service as their goal of life. Inside their heart, there is a desire for enjoyment. Inside their heart, there's a desire for liberation, for mukti. And in order to achieve those desires, they are engaged in the practices of Shuddha Bhakti. They are engaged in chanting, they are engaged in hearing, like that. So here, Srila Rupa Goswami is saying Pratibimba Ratyabhas is characterized by few apparent qualities of Rati. Now, by doing these practices of devotional service, they may sometimes shed some tear. They may show some other symptom like Bhava Bhakti. But since their motive is not pure, they are not actually at the stage of Rati. But Srila Rupa Goswami is saying that even if they are not at the stage of Rati, even such a reflection of Rati awards enjoyment and liberation. Because it is connected with the practices of the Lord, the potency of doing these bhakti practices is so much that even though their goal is not pure devotional service, their goal is enjoyment and liberation. Reflection of Rati can even award enjoyment and liberation without much effort by sadhaka. Now you can see how much potent, how much shaktishali, how much powerful is this practice of devotional service. Further, in verse 47 and 48, Rup Goswami further explains Pratibimb Ratyabhas. This reflection of the moon of Bhava appears in the heart of some person who are attached to enjoyment or liberation, but who become somewhat satisfied by occasional association with real devotees. That moon of Bhava is situated in the sky of the real devotee's heart, and it appears as a reflection in the non-devotee for some time by its impression. A long statement, let me simplify it for you. So here Srila Rupa Goswami in the first line is saying that this reflection of the moon of Bhava uh, appear in the heart of some person who are attached to enjoyment or liberation. Why? Because they associate with real devotees. They are associating with devotees, and because these devotees who actually have real rati in their heart, so when they associate with these devotees, the rati of the heart in the real devotees actually appear as reflection in the heart of these mixed devotees. So that is what it is saying in the second line. The moon of Bhava is situated in the sky of that real devotee's heart. Now he is giving an analogy. He's saying that this moon, this Chandrama, is like Bhava, and this moon is situated in the sky. So this Bhava is situated in the heart of the devotees. So here sky is compared to the heart of the devotees, and that moon is compared to that Bhava. And imagine there is a moon, there is a sky, and there is some blurry water on the Earth planet. And that moon in the sky is being seen, being reflected in this water. So this water is like the heart of this mixed bhakta, this Ashuddha bhakta. Ashuddha bhakta means that bhakta who has this desire for enjoyment and liberation. So in the water where it is not pure, it is actually having some waves, having some disturbance. So that impression of that moon that is there in the sky will appear distorted. So that is why it is abhas. So here Rup Goswami is trying to say that how this rati abhas comes in the heart of these mixed devotees. He's saying that it happens because of the association of pure devotees, association of devotees who are at the level of bhava. So when these mixed devotees associate with these devotees who are having this this mood of bhava bhakti in their heart, this bhava bhakti in their heart actually reflects in the heart of these mixed devotees, and that is why it is known as reflection. It is known as pratibimba. Hmm. This is how it works. But this is also very strong. This is also very powerful. Even this kind of reflection of rati awards enjoyment and liberation without much effort by sadhak. So he's giving those characteristics of pratibimb ratyabhas. Now moving to chaya ratyabhas. In chaya ratyabhas, it's a little different from pratibimb ratyabhas. How? Let us see. It is being mentioned in verse number 49. What it is saying? Chaya ratyabhas has some similarity to real rati, and it is characterized by slight curiosity about the Lord, which is unstable yet destroys suffering. So in Pratibimb Ratyabhas, what did we saw? In Pratibimb Ratyabhas, we saw that it appears in the heart of mixed devotees. And how are we defining mixed devotees? Who have the desire for enjoyment and liberation. But Chaya Ratyabhas appears in the heart of who these devotees have curiosity about the Lord. So curiosity is different from material enjoyment and liberation. Actually, curiosity is also something like to fulfill some desire, desire other than pure devotional service. So there is some curiosity. It is not pure devotional service. So actually, it is also some kind of an enjoyment, but it is different because it is at a much lower stage. It is not actually hardcore material enjoyment. It is at a subtle level of material enjoyment. It is slight curiosity is there, and which is unstable yet destroys suffering. So chaya ratyabhas is also destroys suffering. It also is beneficial, although it is abhas. It is only a shadow. In the next two bullet points, let us understand a little bit more about chaya ratyabhas. Though the Lord and bhakti are spiritual, the person has interest in them only as material objects. But because his curiosity is related to the Lord, there is an appearance of little splendor, chaya, and destruction of suffering. So here, as I was mentioning, there is curiosity about to learn about the Lord in a devotee who manifests chaya ratyabhas. And here it is being described here that although it is abhas, but still the practice that devotee is doing is connected with the Lord. His curiosity is related to the Lord. There's an appearance of little splendor and destruction of suffering. So there is some emotion that comes, that emotion of ecstasy, their emotion of love, their emotion of tears flowing from the eyes, like that. So that emotion can still come or reflect in the heart. Now here, this bullet point gives you a difference between Pratibimb Ratyabhas and Chaya Ratyabhas. In Pratibimb Ratyabhas, the attraction to material enjoyment and liberation is very strong. But in Chaya Ratyabhas, the material curiosity about the Lord is unsteady. So that is the difference. That is why Rup Goswami is classifying Ratyabhas in two types, Pratibimb and Chaya. In Pratibimb, the desire for material enjoyment and liberation is very strong. That is why this devotee engages in devotional activities very strongly. But in Chaya Ratyabhas, the material curiosity about the Lord is unsteady, and the devotee is simply performing these activities out of some uh, out of some interest. That is why he is doing it. Here you give more details. Chaya Ratyabhas appears even in ignorant person by actions pleasing to the Lord, observing festivals, going to the pilgrimage, associating with devotees. So out of some social convention, out of some social curiosity, these devotees start to engage in these activities, like going to uh, festivals, like going to a pilgrimage, associating with devotees. It eventually bestows auspiciousness to those people and appears only with great good fortune. So for this, some good fortune is needed, some good karma in the past is needed. Compared to Pratibimb Ratyabhas, bhakti in Chaya Ratyabhas is less intense, but the motive is not nearly as corrupt. So this is another difference. In Pratibimb Ratyabhas, the desire for enjoyment and the desire for liberation is very strong. But in Chaya Ratyabhas, that motivation is weak. Actually, motivation is not nearly as corrupt. and the practice is less intense. So that is the difference. Even though less intense, Chayaratyabhas is better than Pratibimbratyabhas because there is less ulterior motive. Less ulterior motive. So motive of enjoyment and motive of liberation is considered uh, ulterior in pure devotional bhakti. In Uttama Bhakti's perspective, having intention for jnana and having intention for karma is ulterior. So in Chayaratyabhas, there is some material curiosity to know more about the Lord. Although that curiosity ultimately brings enjoyment to the devotee, but it is less ulterior. That is why here in this bullet, Chayaratyabhas is mentioned to be more or to be better than Pratibimbratyabhas. Here in this slide, in this particular verse 52 and 53, what Srila Rup Goswami is saying that when this Ratyabhas appear, when this semblance of Rati, when this shadow or when this reflection of Rati appears in the heart of devotee, actually it is not bad. Sometimes it may happen that this kind of Rati, which is not pure Rati, which is not 100% pure, actually this kind of adulterated Rati can also take one devotee towards pure Rati. And for that, you need mercy of pure devotees. By the great mercy of pure devotee, Ratyabhas can actually become real Rati. But because these devotees are not, who are practicing these Ratyabhas are not actually pure devotees, they are mixed devotees. Here it is one caution given. But by offending that devotee means the pure devotee, even the best Ratyabhas gradually wanes, just as the full moon in the sky gradually wanes. Now, if this devotee has some Ratyabhas and he indulges into some offenses to a pure devotee, then Srila Rupa Goswami is saying that this Ratyabhas gradually wanes just as the full moon in the sky gradually wanes. On the contrary, if that Ratyabhas, that devotee, that pure devotee is merciful to this particular mixed devotee who has Ratyabhas, then this Ratyabhas can actually become real Rati also. So both are possible. Now here little details are given about Vaishnav Aparadh. So we talk about offenses in the previous slide. Here in this verse, in verse 54, Rup Goswami is giving some dangers of Vaishnava Aparadh. Vaishnava Aparadh means offending a devotee, offending a Vaishnava. And they could be of different degrees. The first, the most severe degree is mentioned if the offense is very grave, very serious. Even real bhav will be destroyed. What to speak of Ratyabhas? What to speak of Bhavabhas? Even real bhav will be destroyed completely. And here an example is given from Shastra. This example is of Dvivida Vanara. So Dvivid Vanara made some offense towards Lakshman ji, and that is how his bhava got disappeared. Then the second is if offense is medium, then real bhav turned into bhava bhas. So if some devotee has bhava and he makes some medium kind of offense towards a pure devotee, then the bhava actually degrades to bhav abhas or ratyabhas. Or if the offense is very slight, very minor offense, then bhava decreases in intensity or degrades to an inferior type. So example is given is Madhurya Vatsalya Sakhya Rati degrade to Dasya Rati, or Dasya Rati actually degrades to Shantarati, like that. So here you may say that why you have not said that Madhurya will degrade to Vatsalya and Vatsalya will degrade to Sakhya. It does not happen like that. So any devotee who is at the level of Madhurya, Vatsalya or Sakhya, if he does some offense, if it is does some slight offense, then Madhurya, Vatsalya, Sakhya will gradually decrease to Dasyarati. It will not happen that Madhurya will first become Vatsalya or Vatsalya one will become to Sakhya and then come to Dasya. Immediately they will drop to straight away from Madhurya to Dasya. And if somebody is at a Dasyarati, then Dasyarati actually degrades to Shantarati. Now our Ratyabhas can also get destroyed or ratyabhas or rati can also destroyed by bad association. By intimately associating with those who desire impersonal liberation, one's bhav can become bhavabhas, or worship of oneself as the Lord. The worship of oneself is known as ahang agraho upasanaha or monism. Now there are two different things we are talking about here. Impersonal liberation. Impersonal liberation means it is something like Mayavad. huh? In this Mayavad or in this impersonal liberation, what it mentions is that I can become God. I can become God. I am God. Those who associate with impersonalists become contaminated by the notion I am God. And when they think that I am also spiritual, God is also spiritual, and one day I will become God. So what they do is they start to do their own worship, considering them as God, and that worship is known as ahang agraho upasnaha. Aham agraho upasna. Aham agraho means I am God. I am same as God. So like that. So if somebody associate with devotees with these kind of intentions, impersonal liberation, aham agraho upasna, then their ratyabhas or rati can actually destroyed, can be destroyed. It is seen sometimes that new devotees, absorbed in the goals of different types of liberation, identify themselves with the Lord momentarily during dancing or other acts of devotion. So here uh, an example is given by Rup Goswami, is saying that although you may come across a devotee who is dancing in kirtan, who is following these practices of bhakti very nicely, but inside he is actually either a impersonal liberation, seeking for impersonal liberation, or he is seeking for ahang agroho upasana. So uh, uh, so these kind of devotees, ultimately their ratyabhas or rati will actually be destroyed. Other causes of bhava. So here another example is given. Bhava from past life. Bhava sometimes appears suddenly in a person without sadhana, mercy, or scriptural knowledge. So we discussed about various reasons of bhava in the previous slides. Either it can come from our sadhana, which is a normal practice, or it may come from mercy of Lord or mercy of pure devotee of the Lord. But here Rup Goswami is giving another possibility. He's saying bhava sometimes appears suddenly in a person without doing sadhana, mercy, or scriptural knowledge. And how it can happen? Because in a previous life, some obstacle interrupted that person's sadhana, and in this life, the obstacle has finally been removed, and that is how that bhava has come. Sometime we may see that the devotee has come to practice of bhakti very new, only maybe couple of months, but we see that he is showing very exalted symptoms of bhava. So Rup Goswami is saying that actually it is coming from previous life. In the previous life, he attained bhava platform, but because he committed some he offended some pure devotee, and that is why his stage reduced from bhava to bhava bhas, a lower stage. And now in this life, that obstacle has finally been removed, and that is how we can see that he is advancing very fast. An example was given, example of Vritrasur. So you will read this story of Vritrasur in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vritrasur in his previous life was King Chitraketu, and in his previous life as King Chitraketu, he offended, he made a jokingly, he made a remark towards Mother Parvati and Lord Shiva, who are pure devotee of the Lord. And because of that joking remark, Chitraketu who was at a bhava stage, actually fall down at a lower stage, and that is why in the next life he got this birth as a asura, and the story of asura is known as this asura was known as Vritrasur. Vritrasur, although he was an asura, he was a pure devotee of the Lord, and a very nice, fascinating story is of Vritrasur we can read in Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe I repeated this slide, maybe because of the second bullet. Bhava attained by Krishna's mercy is most amazing, gives all powers, and is very great. So in this in this verse, which is the 58th verse. I think we have covered till 56th verse. So this one where the example of Dhritarashtra is given, this is the 57th verse. And in the 58th verse, actually, Rupa Goswami is contrasting that if somebody is getting this bhava because of the previous life, and compared to that kind of bhava with the bhava that a devotee attains because of the mercy of a pure devotee or because of Krishna's mercy, actually that particular bhava which comes by the grace of the Lord or by the grace of a pure devotee actually is better. It is much better. So bhava attained by Krishna's mercy is most amazing. It gives all powers and it is very, very great. So a small remark has been mentioned by Rup Goswami in this particular slide. So now we are coming to the end of this particular session. Only 2-3 verses are remaining. Apparent faults in a bhav bhakta. Here Rup Goswami is giving a situation where a bhava bhakta is there, but because there might be some slight anartha still remaining in the heart of that bhava bhakta. So that bhava bhakta might be causing some activities which are not proper, and there might be some fault. There might be some wrong action on the part of this bhava bhakta. So Rup Goswami is saying that need not worry about it. Don't be so nitpicking about such a devotee, because he has already attained bhava bhakta. Actually, he is already very close to his goal. So just ignore those kind of small faults that might sometimes or occasionally might be seen in the bhava bhakta. So he's saying if some apparent fault is seen in a person who has developed real bhava, one should not be hostile to him because he has accomplished the goal in all respects. He's almost there. He's almost about to cross the line. He's almost about to reach prema. So just we should not be hostile towards such a devotee. Example is given. A person who is fully dedicated to the Lord may externally show some contamination, maybe perform some forbidden acts, but he shines due to his internal devotion, just as the full moon, though marked by a figure of a rabbit, is never overcome by darkness. So this example is coming from Narsim Puran, and here one very nice analogy is given. The moon in the night in the sky actually gives very nice soothing light, but in the same moon there might be some dark spots which is mentioned as marked by a figure of a rabbit. Maybe there are some dark spots in that moon, but because uh, of his internal devotion, because of that bright light that moon gives in the dark sky, uh, it is never overcome by darkness. So similarly, we should ignore some maybe minor forbidden acts performed by a bhava bhakta who is about to achieve prema. We should ignore those kind of activities. Probably this is the last slide, and it says some remarkable characteristic of Rati. Uh, Rati is naturally and eternally unstable. Rati is naturally and eternally unstable. How do we understand this? We understand this by going back to the definition of Rati. So going to the definition of Rati, we understood Rati is like ray of sun and Prema is like sun itself. So the moment we see dawn, the moment we see a ray of sun in the early morning, we know that soon Prema is going to come. So that is why it is mentioned it is eternally unstable, because it is soon going to manifest Prema. Rati is naturally and eternally unstable because of its continuous, ever increasing desires for pleasing the Lord, and it is full of bliss. Manifesting this instability in the form of variety of sanchari bhavas, it is tastier than millions of moons. So when a devotee is in the state of bhava bhakti, then he is constantly in a state of flux. It is constantly, continuously, his emotions are changing. And this is known, this is mentioned in this particular verse as Sanchari Bhava. Sanchari Bhava means continuously changing, continuously in Sanchar, continuously in transient condition. And where do we learn more about the Sanchari Bhavas? In Nectar of Devotion itself. But these are chapters 29 to 31. And we will not be studying these chapters in our particular course. We are only going to study till chapter 19, Prema Bhakti. But 33 Sanchari Bhavas are described in chapter 29 to 31 in Nectar of Devotion. Those devotees who have this book and are curious to know what are Sanchari Bhavas, they can give a reading of these Sanchari Bhavas. 33 are mentioned there. But uh, uh, with this, we come to the conclusion and end of our discussion on Bhava Bhakti. In today's class, we discussed very nicely about external symptoms and how external symptoms are not considered as a very foolproof solution to understand the symptoms of somebody who is at the level of Bhava Bhakti. Then we discussed about the internal symptoms of Bhava Bhakti, which could be utilized to identify a devotee in at a Bhava stage. And then we discussed about Bhava Bhas, or in other words, Ratya Bhas, how Ratya Bhas is of two types, Pratibimb and Chaya, and how various the differences between Pratibimba and Chaya, what are the important characteristics of Pratibimba Ratyabhas and what are the important characteristics of Chaya Ratyabhas, and some few things about faults in Bhava Bhakta and how we should ignore those faults. So like that we have uh, uh, understood nicely about the science of Bhava Bhakti through this glorious book known as Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu and summary study by Srila Prabhupada as Nectar of Devotion. So thank you very much. All glories to the Nectar of Devotion, all glories to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, all glories to Srila Rup Goswami, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, thank you, thank you very, very much. Ah, yeah, yeah. Hare Krishna. Yes. Any questions? Any remarks? Any confusions? So kindly give me this feedback. Was the class comprehensible, understandable? Did you find any difficulty understanding the subject matter? That is the foremost concern, like every time I have. So feedback from 2-3 devotees might be helpful. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
You have done your best, and we have also tried to capture as much as possible. But I would say that our attitude should be bordering a kind of madness. I would say mad in love with the Lord. A man living in this present world apparently will definitely find it very difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
And doing everything and getting success at every place perhaps is not possible. So we'll have to leave many, many things to come to the level of a
Yeah,
rati.
yeah. Yeah, they are very
So
exalted states, very
yes,
exalted state. But the see the purpose of this particular class is at least to understand theoretically what actually it means, because there are many you would say wrongdoings or malpractices in the name of devotion, in the name of bhakti that we see in the outside world sometimes.
very
So
right.
so one objective is to understand that this is not a cheap thing to show to have these kind of symptoms. Another objective is that we as devotees become a little more cautious about if somebody is claiming that he's at a state of bhava or rati. And the third point, which is actually uh, for me personally is very a takeaway, my personal takeaway is that uh, our acharyas, our exalted acharyas like Srila Rup Goswami and so on, understood the process of bhakti so detailed in so elaborate manner, and has written this book called Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu with so much clarity and so much details around the process of pure bhakti, uttama bhakti, that in my own personal heart it uh, increases the level of respect and appreciation for this subject matter. So
Definitely.
so
Yes.
if we can take away these 2-3 takeaways from these classes on in particular raganuga bhakti, bhava bhakti, and maybe in the next class in the coming classes about prema bhakti, I think we are doing justice to the learning that we are having. Theoretically, we will know these terms, so it will help us in our uh, readings, in our further discussion in the coming classes, maybe in Srimad Bhagavatam or maybe in another class. So theoretically, now you are also equipped with the understanding of various terms that are being used in description of bhakti and so on. So that way, I think these 4 or 5 bullet points, if we keep in our heart, if we keep in our mind, I think uh, I don't think that we have wasted our time, or we have kind of misutilized our time. I think it's time
It's very
reasonably spent.
yes.
Yeah. So that way.
Prabhuji,
Yes,
Thank
we
you,
Pradeep
were
sir.
not
ji.
we just liked it because we are not involved with this kind of thing before. This is like a first time hearing something that I never thought existed.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That is. Yeah,
so
that is the.
whatever we are learning, we want to thank you very much for getting us involved.
Yeah, I also should thank you because you are giving me opportunity to read it and speak it in front of all of you. It is yeah, maybe a little more privileged, but then certainly I am also very grateful to all of you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks a lot. And meanwhile, let me welcome Jaymala Mataji, Anupama Mataji, Sunanda Mataji, and Lakshmi Vinayak Prabhu, Nandikishore Prabhu. So welcome, dear devotees. I very happy to see your eagerness to learn about these subject matter, although may appear exalted, but still uh, I would say enjoyable and interesting and relishable. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you very
yeah.
much.
Thank you, thank you. Any questions? Any doubts?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Prabhu Nandakishore
Yes,
here.
yes, Prabhuji.
Just one check. Maybe I joined little bit late. Maybe I would have missed it. What does mean exact rati?
Rati and bhav are the same. They are synonyms.
Okay.
So
Okay.
many times in the literature, in the Puranas and in the Vedic literature, uh, the word used is rati. So that is why Srila Rupa Goswami in the previous class, as I mentioned, he has actually also written this in a particular verse in the previous chapter, in the previous class, that the word rati is used to describe the word bhava in various Vedic literature, and that is why the same word I am also using in explaining what is bhava bhakti.
No.
So
Okay.
that is same.
Okay.
Yeah. So you may refer to the previous class. Probably you might have missed it.
Yes.
Uh, so you
I'll
can
go.
listen to that class. In that class, we have explained it. Yeah.
Sure,
And
Prabhu.
I would say uh, uh, you can also see these are the books that I have referred while giving these classes. The original Nectar of Devotion is there, which is our course is actually based on this book only. But in order to understand the Nectar of Devotion, the original work is given by Srila Rupa Goswami and commented by Srila Jeev Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And these commentaries are available in Sanskrit. But now, because of Bhanu Maharaj, one of our very senior leaders in our movement, he has translated these books into English. So you can read the original verses, you can read the commentary of Srila Jeev Goswami in English. So this one also I have referred. So only volume one, although there are 4 volumes, I have referred only volume one because that is all our purposes right now. And there is also another book called Waves of Devotion, which has been written to assist our study of these two books, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu and Nectar of Devotion. And another guidebook that has been written is Bhakti Rasamrit Subodhini. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you may feel a little bit more intimidated by if I'm mentioning these four books. So, if you don't have that much time or capacity to read four books, it is not necessary for you to read them. If you go and listen to the lectures and refer to the slides that I have presented, that should give you a good, reasonably good understanding of this book. And later on, as you develop more curiosity, want to understand much more in depth, have a personal reading of your these commentaries and other things, you may want to purchase them and you want to go a little bit more deeper into them. But for right now, even if you are listening to the lectures and referring to the slides, that should be good enough.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Dhanwad.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Okay, very nice. So I hope no other questions. Anupama Mataji has unmuted her mic. Maybe she's getting ready to ask a question.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
See, in that Bhava Abhasa, you said that we experience bliss and lessening of suffering. Can it be compared to the Kleshagni and Subhada?
Yeah. It can be compared to that. Correct. Yeah. So that is the nature of bhakti. So it actually, even if we are at a mixed platform, if we are not at a pure platform, the practice of bhakti generally brings auspiciousness, brings reduces our material suffering and so on. So very nicely pointed out. Happy to receive your comment. Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, then thanks a lot for your nice interest. Next class we will not be having on Sunday. We will be having our next class next to next Sunday. Next class on Sunday, myself and most likely Rakesh Gargji from Meerut and our Ishwar uncle from Rohtak will be joining me in a winter camp in Govardhan Eco Village, which is a place 2 hours away from Mumbai. So we are gathering together there for some nice satsang for 3-4 days, nice prasad and full 4 days of 100% Krishna conscious activities. And I would request if other devotees are also interested, still there is some time, but there is no pressure. In future also, you may want to uh, consider traveling to some places like this to come and see devotional life, Vaishnava life with much more close quarters. So with that, I would like to sign off from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Hare
Prabhuji.
Hare
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 Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Rakesh
Krishna.
ji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji.